Welcome to Google Partners Connect, broadcasting live from Mountain View, California. We're so glad you're here with us today. My name is Aaron, and I'm part of the Partners Marketing team here at Google. We have a great lineup of presenters today who will tell you more about mobile marketing and why it should be the foundation of your digital strategy. Then, we'll take a closer look at how you can work with your partners to grow your business online using Google's suite of advertising tools. But before we get started, I'd like to remind you of a few quick things. First, the partners in the room today are there to answer your questions during or after the presentation. From search engine marketing specialists to web developers, they're all certified by Google to help you grow your business online. Next, we'd love for you to join the conversation by using #PartnersConnect on Twitter. At the end of the show, we're hosting a live Q&A session, so we invite you to ask us questions beforehand so we can answer them on air. Now, it's my pleasure to turn things over to Tim Reese, Director of Performance Agencies in the Americas, who dropped by our studio to discuss why more businesses than ever before are turning to mobile to reach their consumers. Over to you, Tim.
Hi, I'm Tim Reese, Director of Performance Agencies at Google. I wanted to talk to you today about what's going on in the consumer landscape in digital media consumption and what you can do about it. Today, digital is where consumers are spending most of their time, whether it's through the internet or through mobile devices, whether they're on laptops or tablets. This is the place you're going to win or lose your coming consumers. And the thing that drove that is this idea that friction is what motivates people. Marketers win or lose depending upon whether they are removing friction from consumers or adding friction to those journeys. And in the light of that, we need to ask ourselves two questions. What are the frictions in my consumer's life that, because of who my brand is and what we do, I have the right to address? And on the flip side of that, what are the frictions that we are inadvertently introducing into the path that our consumers want to take and that we want them to take? In terms of removing frictions from their lives, think about things like the first bank that came up with the idea of taking a picture of your check rather than bringing it into the bank. Think about it. That bank removed a friction that we had all become comfortable with. We would always have to bring our check to an ATM or to the bank. But now they removed that for their own customers and heightened the awareness of that friction for every other bank's customers, who were now walking into the bank with those checks saying, "Why am I talking to you? I shouldn't have to do this." They had raised the bar. In terms of frictions that we introduce, I always think of those times when I'm on a laptop and someone asks me to fill out a form by telling them my city, state, and zip code. I always think, well, why are you asking me that? Shouldn't you just ask my zip code and fill it out yourself? But when those questions come up on a mobile device, I may actually leave rather than just be annoyed. And there are reasons for that we'll address in a little bit. So let's start by looking at what hasn't changed. What hasn't changed is the primary motivations of consumers. They've always wanted to be entertained, so they found television, a medium that just washes over them and you can, without being asked much of yourself, just sort of be entertained. And marketers recognized that as an opportunity, and they said, gee, in this lightweight medium, we can get our name out there. They don't have to think a lot, but we can build recognition on that medium. Consumers have always wanted to be informed, and so they read newspapers and magazines. And again, marketers said, wow, look at all those consumers there. We can reach them through this medium, and because they're more involved, more engaged, this is an opportunity for us to tell more of our story, to gain consideration. Consumers have always wanted to explore their world, so they got in their cars and they drove around, and we used the original location-based advertising in the form of billboards and such to say, hey, there's a McDonald's up ahead, or whatever it might be, to get people to come to the location. And finally, consumers have always wanted to acquire things, and so they went to stores or whatever kind of location, and in those stores we did in-store advertising in the form of things like end caps and shelf talkers to try to close the deal. And in today's world, all of those things remain true, but increasingly they're happening on mobile. So yes, people continue to watch television, but increasingly they're watching video on their phones. And of course they're still reading, but odds are they've canceled their print subscription in favor of reading that same material on their phones. Of course we see billboards. You can't help it. But increasingly, someone in the car is looking at information on the phone rather than waiting for someone to tell them what they can know. And finally, of course, people are affected by in-store advertising. But we've for years now been reading about the effects of showrooming. Consumers standing in real estate paid for by a retailer, but looking at their device to find if they can buy that product that is on the shelf in front of them for less somewhere else. Or maybe they're looking for coupons or reviews or recipes or whatever. But they're being affected by their mobile device in store. These mobile devices have been the most dramatic shift in consumer behavior in certainly my lifetime. We no longer go online as we did when we used to have to find a computer to get on and visit the internet. We're constantly connected. We live online. And this is a driving factor in why phones are so important to us. Today, if someone misses their wallet, it takes about a day for them to report it missing, whereas it takes only about an hour before someone panics about their phone. That's how personal these devices are. Think about it. Almost half the population would rather go without a toothbrush for a week than be without their phones. This is how important these devices are to us. In fact, here's one of your future consumers. I met this young man on a train. I asked his dad if I could take his picture, but he's already made mobile part of his life. So maybe you've seen this. Mary Meeker, the famous financial analyst, every year does a report that she calls Internet Trends. And every year it looks pretty much like this. There's this disparity between how consumers are spending their time and how marketers are spending their money. And that disparity is most heavily expressed at the ends of this chart. You can see that marketers are disproportionately spending money on print as consumers are spending less and less of their time there, but are not spending anywhere near as much on mobile as consumers are spending their time. This chart looks pretty much the same every year, but if you look at it over time, you realize that over 4 years, consumers have given up 13 points of media consumption time from other media to mobile. Not one medium has grown in the proportion of time that people are spending other than mobile, to the point that now consumers are spending about the same amount of time consuming media on mobile as they are on the internet in general, about 25% of their time. And there is no way that consumers are spending that much time on this platform without it influencing their behaviors. And bear in mind, this is specifically media consumption, not phone calls, not texts, media consumption. So here's an important point to realize about all this. Mobile has come on fast. It has been the fastest adopted new product in the history of humanity. And these things develop at an exponential rate. In fact, the futurist Ray Kurzweil has actually gone back to the printing press and plotted different technologies and established that they all proceed at an exponential rate. But people, and this is where the problem comes in, people think in a linear fashion. And as Ray says, we all know the difference. Linear is 1, 2, 3, 4, and exponential is 1, 2, 4, 16. And the problem is that because we see things linearly, we will always overestimate the near term and underestimate the long term. In fact, vastly underestimate the long term. And that difference between the 1, 2, 3, 4 and the 1, 2, 4, 16 doesn't seem that profound until you realize that the 40th step of a linear progression is 40, and the 40th step of an exponential progression is 1 trillion. That should be the attention-getting factor for you. However far behind you think you are with regard to the mobile adoption, you're not going to be 1 step more behind tomorrow. You'll be 1, 2, 4, 16, 1 trillion steps behind. So however fast you think you need to be going to catch up, you need to be going faster than that. So as we thought about that at Google, we considered that we see our biggest opportunities in the smallest moments. We visit these devices 150 times a day, 162 minutes a day. That means on average those sessions are about 1 minute long each. And that's a long way toward explaining why small speed bumps on laptop computers become great big speed bumps on our mobile phones. So when we think about those 150 times, we've got moments where we don't really want to hear from marketers. It might be a text from my boss or an email to my wife. But there are other moments where the best answer might come from a marketer, where you might be sitting on the best solution to the problem I'm trying to solve. And we call those micromoments. They're defined by the confluence of intent, context, and immediacy. At Google, we've always defined ourselves as the database of intentions. People search for things they want or need. But the context angle brings a lot more to bear, because a search for pizza in the morning in my kitchen means something very different than a search for pizza in the evening when I'm on the street. In one case, I'm looking for recipes. In another, I'm looking for a restaurant. Finally, we've got that element of immediacy. Because our mobile devices are with us all the time, we have an expectation that we're going to be able to solve this problem instantly. Now, what goes along with that is a change in the expectations of consumers. This idea of immediacy is first and foremost, that they won't have to wait, that they can solve a problem or scratch an itch instantly. They have extremely high expectations for frictionless experiences, because if you fail to provide it, they fully expect someone else will provide that frictionless, easy response. And because of those two things, consumers are increasingly open to unscripted decisions. That is, if a brand that has built its name with me is there in response to my question, and so is a brand which is not, I'm probably going to favor the brand that has built its name. But if that brand fails to answer when I have a question, I'm totally open to the possibility of someone else who is willing to answer that question, or is willing to provide that immediacy I'm looking for, or provide that frictionless experience. There are 4 things we recommend that marketers do about these things. The first is be there. If you aren't there to answer, you have 0 opportunity to engage that consumer. You must be present and able to respond to their request. Having done that, it's not enough just to have been there, but the way you're there matters. This is a very personal device. It's very close to your consumer's face. Shouting at her is not an option. You need to be useful and think about those frictions and how your presence can help remove frictions for the consumer. Next, you have to be quick. Again, this goes with these ideas of friction, because consumers have come to expect that a site will load in fewer than 3 seconds, and that the path they will take to convert will be seamless and thoughtful. Finally, we need to understand things better than we do. We need to connect the dots and recognize that mobile does contribute to direct conversions, but it also converts or influences conversions on desktops. It drives people to convert by downloading an app and converting there, or placing a phone call, or coming to your store. We need to make sure that we're seeking information about all these different pathways and synthesizing it so that we value mobile properly. Now, everything I've described is pretty conceptual, pretty high level. To actually execute these things, you need experts. You need folks like Google partners who are well-trained, well familiar with these phenomena, and have all sorts of resources they can bring to bear to help you navigate this process. Because, as our founder, Larry Page, has said, consumers expect and deserve amazing mobile experiences. Your ability to come through on this will define your success in the coming years. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Tim, for telling us a bit more about friction and how mobile is the best way to reach consumers during their key moments of intent. Next, I'd like to introduce Fred Valet, an AdWords evangelist at Optimizer, who will explain how to strengthen your business's online presence by using Google's suite of advertising tools. The floor is all yours, Fred.
Thank you, Aaron. It's good to be back here in the studio. So Tim told us a few very conceptual things about how the industry is changing, how people are using mobile devices. And what I wanted to do for the next 20 or so minutes is really show you some tactics and some Google tools that you can use to put some of this into practice. So why am I up here telling you how to do all of these things? Well, I've been working in the industry for a very long time. I did my first PPC campaign back in 1998 when I was in my dorm room at Stanford University. I later ended up joining Google because I thought it was an amazing company, and they were really helping small businesses get some customers in the door when sometimes that wasn't the easiest thing to do. So I worked at Google. Nowadays, I run my own company where we build tools and software to make online advertising much easier. So I work with hundreds, if not thousands, of customers, and I've seen all of the issues that they face and really solutions that are out there to make you successful when it comes to growing your business online. So you can read the agenda right there. It roughly breaks down into 3 areas. So first, we're going to talk about how to get your business online. Second, we're going to talk about how to make sure that people actually find you online by spending some advertising dollars. And last, we're going to talk about some of the more sophisticated and advanced methodologies and some of the cool new tools that Google has to really help drive success for you. So first is about being found across Google. And really the question on this slide is, why did you all decide to take time out of your busy days to even attend this session? And it's probably because you realize a lot of people are coming to Google when they need information, when they need help with something. In fact, 40,000 searches happen on Google every single second. That's more than 1 trillion searches happening in any given year. And this is great because these are people searching for information, and potentially you and your business have a solution, an answer for those companies. So regardless whether that consumer, that business is doing a search on a mobile device, on a desktop, on a laptop, or nowadays even with that new Google Assistant, the Google Home device. So there's kind of a shift in how people behave, and Tim really talked about that shift towards mobile, but regardless of the platform, of the device that you're trying to be found on, Google has solutions for you when it comes to that. So really the first place to start, I recommend, is Google My Business. Google My Business doesn't cost you anything to get listed, and it's basically your way to give Google some additional information about who your business is, what types of services you have, what kind of products you have, payment methods you accept, your hours of operation, all of those basic things that consumers need to know. It's very easy to get started. All you do is you go on Google, you do a search for your business name, and chances are Google already knows that your business exists. Google uses different sources to pull in this information, but here's your chance now to say, hey, that is my business. You actually claimed a business. And then, of course, there's a little bit of a verification process because Google wouldn't want your competitor to say that they own your business and kind of mess with it. But you go through a simple verification through a postcard or a phone call, and now you can start to edit your listing online. So you can put in all of that information that I just talked about. Now you can really try to make a compelling argument why a consumer, a business who's looking for some help should come to you for help with whatever it is that they need. Now, the other thing with that Google My Business listing is, number 2, it makes it easy for that prospective client to connect with you. You've done a good job convincing them that yours is the business to work with, but they might want to come over to your business, to your service location. They might want to give you a call. If you control the Google My Business listing, you can actually tell Google what the correct phone number is, where the correct pin marker is on the map. Now, this may sound a little bit crazy, but I've actually seen examples where Google puts the pin marker in the wrong location on a very big building. Kind of the classic example here is a bowling alley. They tend to be very big buildings. And if Google puts the pin marker at the back of the building and people go there and they park on the wrong side of it, it's kind of a pain to walk all the way around, find where the entry door is. So here's your chance as the business owner to really say, hey, Google, this is where consumers, customers should come to find me. And then Tim was talking about people looking for a business on a smartphone, and here's another stat, but 50% of people who search for a business actually want to go and visit that business within a day. So that's why it's so important to make sure it's really easy for that consumer to find where you are. Now, as Tim was saying, this whole mobile growth is huge, and here's another chart that really illustrates this. And the reason I want to talk about this is because when you think about your websites, where are you going to invest your effort? Are you going to make a great desktop website, or are you going to make a great mobile experience? People often come to me and they point at their laptops and they say, hey, I wish that I could be the #1 result on this Google page. And they kind of take the laptop example as the reference point. But really, when you look at laptops and desktop computers and the number of searches happening, that's the blue area of this chart. That is a shrinking segment compared to the yellow area, which is mobile devices and smartphones. That's a growing segment. And so the basic point here is make sure that you're playing in the area that's actually a growing opportunity. Don't focus your efforts in something that's shrinking. I love this stat. Tim talked about toothbrushes a little bit. This is the unspoken stat that kind of goes along with that, and people love to tweet this one out. But basically, the stat is that more people in the world own smartphones than toothbrushes. It's a great stat. It's kind of disgusting, but I guess at least the good news is that for those people who don't have a toothbrush, they probably have a smartphone, so you can just call them up and you don't have to talk to them face to face. But that's how big mobile is, right? So make sure you're playing in the right place. Now, kind of a crazy thing, but smartphones and telephones were actually invented to talk to people. So if your business's goal is to get more phone calls, you can actually do that. This is great because you don't need to have a website. By the way, I highly recommend you get a website because that's where people are going to be searching for. But even if you don't have a website today, there's a call-only ad text format. You can start that up right now, and the goal of that ad is to get people to call up your business. So you don't even have to have a website. You can still get consumers to find where you are. There's a great case study right there from Jason selling insurance. And basically the point is, if you get that consumer, that prospective customer on the phone, as a sales team, you probably do a better job finding what the pain points of that customer are. So you do a better job of converting that prospective lead into an actual client. And if you understand the value that phone calls drive for you, you can actually better value the money you potentially spend on driving those clicks that come to your website. So when it comes to designing for mobile and actually maybe investing in having that mobile experience, it's really important to think about a mobile-first world. Many companies already have websites, and kind of what's happened over the last decade is as desktop screens have become bigger and bigger, people and companies have just put more and more information onto their web pages because they basically didn't have to think about what to be prioritized. There's plenty of space on that screen anyway. But now all of a sudden the screen is shrinking, right? Your desktop screen is still pretty big, but people do more and more searches on smartphones, which have by and large tiny screens. So it's really important to figure out what you prioritize. And there's a great case study here as well from PlusNet. And what they did is they had been putting too much information on their desktop sites, and then that had been translated into the mobile site, and it just wasn't working well for them. And what they said is, let's use a free product like Google Analytics to actually figure out what people tend to search for on a mobile device. And so they started prioritizing those things. They enhanced the experience on the mobile device. They drove a lot more conversion from that. But the great thing that happened at the same time is because they were using responsive design, which basically translates from one screen to another screen very easily, they were also getting better results on the desktop side. They'd gotten rid of the clutter, and they were really able to hone in on what consumers cared about the most. And so Google Analytics is a free solution from Google that can really help you figure out what is it that we should prioritize. And then you can use responsive design website builders to make sure that you're not necessarily investing a ton more money to build these experiences. Now, the next thing you can do on top of Google My Business and having a mobile site is to invite Google to come into your business. And this is called Google Business View. Now, you're all familiar probably with Google Street View. You've probably seen the Google cars drive around taking imagery of the street. And this is great because as a consumer, you can go into Google Maps and you can get a 360-degree view of what location that business is based in. But wouldn't it be great if the consumer could actually step inside of your business? Say that you have a great restaurant and you have a waterfront seating. Well, you probably don't see that from the street, but if the consumer can come into your store and actually see how beautiful things are, it may make it more likely that they will want to come in. So Google has a solution for this, and they can help you find a photographer who can come into your business and do an amazing job of representing your business in the best possible light so that the consumer can actually step into it. Now, point number 3 is connecting with consumers at the moment of relevance. When I personally joined Google in 2002, that was sort of the big thing. It was connecting at the moment of relevance. And what is a moment of relevance? Well, here's an illustration that you see on the slide. This poor person has their car broken down on the side of the road, and lucky for them, they probably have a smartphone, so they go and do a search for tow truck. Well, this is the moment of relevance. The moment of relevance is when what that consumer needs is being answered by a business that could help out and send a tow truck to pick up this car. Now, nowadays we talk more about micro moments, and micro moments are possible because people have smartphones. So at very odd times throughout the day, people can just have a thought and immediately pull out their phone and have that interaction with the search engine and get to that relevant answer that helps them with the need that they have at that time. So when it comes to these moments of relevance, that's really centered on the Google search results page. And here you see an example of that. You should have seen this thousands of times by now, so this is nothing new to you, but kind of a key point on here is the keyword. So to be found on Google search, you have to talk to your partners and really understand what will be your focus keywords and put yourselves in the shoes of your users and figure out what they're going to be searching for. So an example here is an insurance company. They might say, well, let's buy the keyword recreational vehicle insurance. What is that, recreational vehicle insurance? When I shop for insurance, I'm looking for motorcycle insurance, boat insurance. I'm not looking for recreational vehicle, right? That's the lingo from the company, but you want to put yourselves in the shoes of users and figure out what is it that they're likely to put in. Now, when these search results then show up, the first ones on that page are oftentimes ads. These are placed through AdWords. And as you can see, these ads have a little bit of text, but they've also been enhanced with ad extensions. So phone numbers, location data, the types of services and products that these companies provide. So the goal of these ads is really to be relevant. It's to answer the potential client's question about how is it that you can help me. Okay, so these ads, when they're relevant, that's when somebody might click on them. This is the other beautiful thing, by the way. You, as the advertiser, only pay when somebody clicks on the ad and decides to come and visit your website. So if somebody's not interested because maybe you don't have the right type of services, well, then you don't have to pay for that. You only pay if that interaction happens. Now, point number 4 here is make these search results that you have, make them better by adding more ad extensions. And I showed you a few examples on the desktop page, but I wanted to show you as well what that might look like on a mobile device. So Google has 11 ad extensions, and your partners probably know about a couple of secret betas that I'm not allowed to say here publicly on the live stream, but you can ask them afterwards and sort of get their take on which of these 11 extensions work the best. Do you potentially have access to some of the new ones that Google is trying out? Now, the extension that you see there in this particular scenario is the message extension. Now, if you talk to a Gen X person, they probably say, well, why would you use a phone to start texting, right? Wouldn't it be simpler to just pick up the phone and call that person? Well, great, there's a call extension for that. But Gen Y, millennials, they love texting. So give them the option that they like as well. And this is a way for the prospective client to click on the ad and basically start texting with that business as opposed to picking up the phone or even visiting that website. And the reason that these extensions are so cool and so powerful is that when Google looks at it, there's a 30% increase in click-through rate. Click-through rate, by the way, that's the number of clicks divided by the number of times that the ad has been shown. And remember, you only pay when somebody clicks on the ad. So this is basically saying for a very minimal effort in terms of adding more data to the ad, you can get 30% more interested customers to come check you out. So this is one of the easiest ways that you can enhance your ad. It doesn't cost you any extra money until the person actually decides to click on the ad and come visit you. But by that point, they're pretty well qualified because the more information you've shown them, the more likely it is they're actually interested in doing business with you. All right, the next thing is sometimes these ads can be a little bit impersonal, right? So especially if you're in a service business, wouldn't it be nice to present yourself and kind of show people your friendly face and how you think about the business and maybe even why you got into the business, why you're passionate about it? Well, so here's a great example from a dentist in California. And he did a video here about Halloween candy and what it does to kids' teeth. Now, Halloween just happened, so this is very topical, but it's a great way to share some content and get prospective clients to see what you're all about, how you think about your business. And now, as a prospective client, if you have the option of going to someone whose face you've never seen, and it's kind of a toss-up whether this is going to be a great person or maybe kind of like a a grumpy person and you don't want to take your kids there as the dentist, well, you're going to go to the one who you've seen and who you kind of already like. Now, if you think about YouTube, 6 billion hours of content are being watched on there every single month. So this can be another great channel, not just to show people who you are, but also to find people who are looking for the type of service that you provide. And even if you think about YouTube versus maybe making some investment in TV advertising, well, it turns out that YouTube generates twice the number of searches per impression than TV. So, and it doesn't cost anything to get on YouTube. Of course, if you want to promote your video on YouTube, there's a solution for that as well. It's called TrueView. And in the case of TrueView, you only pay when somebody actually goes and watches your video. All right, number 5, managing reviews. This kind of goes back to Google My Business. If you've claimed your business and you've said, hey, I'm the owner of that location, you can start responding to reviews that people are leaving for your business. Now, people really trust reviews. They look to these and they say the 70% of people trust those reviews that have been left by other people. And that kind of makes sense, right? For me as the business owner, I can say I've got the most amazing business, but if other people say that that's actually true, who are you going to believe? The other people who are my customers or me as the business owner? Okay, so it's kind of a no-brainer that reviews are really, really important. But what's even more important about reviews is that nobody's 100% perfect. Everybody's going to have an off day at some point. And so if you see a review that's all 5-star ratings, that may actually seem a little bit sketchy. What I as a consumer like to see is some reviews that aren't necessarily like 1 stars, but maybe a 3-star or a 4-star review, and kind of find out what is it that that customer didn't like about the experience. Sometimes it's the price, sometimes it's the particular type of service that was offered. And me as a new prospect, I can look at that and I can say, well, maybe I'm not quite as price sensitive as this other person. So even though it's a 3-star review, it doesn't matter that much to me. It's not actually a negative for that business. But you as the business owner, you now also get to respond to these reviews. And this is really important. So if you get a positive review, always say thank you, right? That shows that you're engaged, that you're actually actively monitoring this and that you care about the reviews. And if you get a negative review, don't go and fight it, just apologize and try to make it right. Because once again, that prospective client is going to look at that negative review, and what may matter more to them is how you responded as opposed to what the person said in the first place. So if you sound like you actually care about making it right, that could actually turn a negative review into a very positive indicator for that prospective client who is reading it. Now, of course, we've talked about doing searches, but most of the time on the internet is not spent doing searches. A lot of searches happen, but 95% of the time is actually spent doing other things like playing games, reading news, reading reviews, looking at sports scores. And the good news is you can still be present at all of those moments thanks to the Google Display Network. Now with the Google Display Network, you have access to 2 million publisher sites, and there's a variety of targeting options. Targeting options are really important because they help you hone in on the right prospective client. So you can say, show my ads on pages that are related to the types of services that I sell. That's called contextual targeting. Or you can say, I actually don't care so much about what is on that page, but I do care about what that user has historically shown an interest in. So that's interest targeting. So someone who looks at a lot of sports websites, even if they're on a financial website, you could still target an ad to them. So there's topic targeting as well, which basically says I want to show my ads on financial websites, sports websites, etc. So it's a great way to get display ads, image ads, or video ads in front of a whole bunch of other people. So let's get into some of the advanced stuff now. When it comes to spending advertising dollars online, you really want to make sure you're spending it in the right place. And that, by the way, is the beauty of online marketing. It's very easy to constantly customize it, show your ads based on who is searching, based on the right time of day, the right location. But what if you figured out that there's actually some outside factors that also have an impact on how much you sell or how your business runs? So for example, say that you have an ice cream shop and you know fewer people come to the ice cream shop when it's raining. You can actually act on that. You can have automations through AdWords that say, if the weather is currently says that it's raining, show my ad for my cappuccino machine and my hot chocolate that I sell in my ice cream shop. And if the weather is nice and sunny, then show my ads for the ice cream and the gelato that I sell. So you can really tie your business logic, what you know about your business, into what happens with the advertising that you do through Google. Now, a very specific example, and this is something where you can grab the code from Google right away, but you can connect your online and your offline marketing. And this is beautiful because some of you probably already invest some dollars in radio ads. You may still be running ads in newspapers. And it's very important to understand that that offline media drives online engagement. So as a result of seeing an ad in the newspaper or hearing about it on the radio, think about what you do. You probably go online and you search for that business. So now what you can do is you can say, here's a spreadsheet that has the dates and the times when my ads are going to be appearing offline, and I want to increase my bids or my budgets at those exact same times so that I'm going to be the #1 advertiser at those times when people are going to be searching because of the efforts I'm making in offline media. All right, the next one here is a very specific tip as well, and this is mostly for retailers. So if you sell products, you can be found for product searches. This is an amazing stat, but 1 in 3 clicks for retailers come off of shopping ads. You've probably seen these shopping ads. These are the ads that have the image of the product as well as the price. Google features these really prominently, and it's for a good reason. It's because the consumer loves these, as opposed to a piece of text where you kind of have to figure out, oh, what does that shoe look like and what's the price of that shoe? Well, boom, here's a picture of the shoe and here's the exact price. So consumers love these because they can actually click on the thing that makes sense for them. And it makes great sense for the advertiser too, because when that consumer has already seen the photo and they know how much it costs, the chances are much better they're actually going to go and buy that product from you. So to get started with this, all you have to do is set up a Google merchant feed that has a listing of all your products, and then you can feed it in through AdWords so that Google will start showing these ads when consumers do searches for those particular types of products. Now, whether you're selling products or selling services, you're going to pay for a number of clicks that will not convert. Nobody's going to have a 100% conversion rate. But it doesn't end there. The story doesn't end there. What you can do as a business is you can have cookies that are dropped on the sites when on your site when a prospective customer comes to your site. If they don't convert, you can actually show them ads as they start to do other things on the internet. This is called remarketing. And so the example that we have here is somebody did a search for a flight from New York City to San Francisco. They looked at some prices, they didn't purchase, but that advertiser was smart. They cookied the user, and as that user was now reading the news, that advertiser said, hey, remember you were looking for a flight from New York to San Francisco? By the way, the price just dropped. Would you like to buy it now? And the next thing you know, that consumer has actually gone and made the purchase thanks to remarketing. Now, remarketing is one way. The other way that's really great is customer match. So what you can do is you can have a list of all of the email addresses from your existing customers. You could have collected those online, or you could literally have a sheet in your business where people put on their email address as they come into your store. You feed those email addresses into the Google system, and Google will figure out who those people are, and now you can start to show them ads as they do other things on the internet. You can bid higher for those specific clients when they do searches related to your business. And then the final point here is managing to your targets. This is really the beauty of online marketing, is that it's all so measurable and it's all so quick to update it. So you can literally know this one keyword, I spent this much money and I got this many sales from it, right? If that's doing great, then spend more money on that keyword. On the other hand, if there's a keyword where you're not driving those same returns, then go ahead and spend less on it. You can constantly be tweaking this. Now, to be able to do this, this is really important. You have to track conversions. Your partners are probably going to say, hey, can you put some piece of code on your website that tracks these conversions? If you don't do this, it makes it really hard for the partner to help drive the great results that you expect. So work with them, because this is one of the most important pieces of making sure you have a successful campaign. Now, conversions could be anything from someone filling out a form on your site with some lead information, but it could also be people calling you up. Google has ways to help track that as well. So if the consumer sees your phone number in an ad and they decide to call directly without even clicking on the ad, Google can track that back all the way down to the keyword. If the consumer, on the other hand, says, hey, let me go and check out this website first, you can still show your phone number and a tracking number on your own website. And if the consumer now calls after having read your website, Google can still associate that back to the keyword and the ads that drove that initial interaction. So it really enables you to spend more money on the keywords that perform well for you and scale back on the keywords that don't do so well. Now, another way that you may want to track conversions is you may actually want people to come into your physical location. Google's really good at measuring this too. There are some older techniques that tend to take a lot of time, they tend to take a lot of money, but Google has this amazing technology where they've mapped most of the world, and they've mapped it down to the level where they can actually understand if someone's using location history on their phone, they can know if I'm in a shopping mall, which floor am I on? If there's a wall here and there's one store here and another one on the other side of the wall, they can literally know which side of the wall I'm on, which store I'm in. And they do this using GPS technology, as well as Wi-Fi signals, as well as cell phone signals. So they got all this data that they're pulling in, and it really enables them to give you great conversion information. Now, this is available within 48 hours, so it's very quick to act on. You can do constant optimization as a result of that. So that's the end of all of the tips that I have for you. So I do recommend that you go and work with one of your partners. I've given you a lot of information. It's going to be really hard to put all of this into practice right here, right today. But the good news is the partners, they've been doing this for a long time. They know all the right tools, all the right technologies. So figure out what you thought was most interesting, talk to them about it, and let's figure out a plan for putting some of this into practice. So I think we're going to take some questions now, but before I do that, I'm going to hand it back over to Aaron.
Great. Thank you so much for that comprehensive overview, Fred. For our last few minutes, as Fred mentioned, I'd like to turn to our live Q&A. We've been keeping an eye on all of your questions through Twitter, and we'll now take some time to answer as many of those as we can. So let's go ahead and get started. The first one here is from Darren in Miami. He asked, I sell mostly to businesses. Any tips for how to target companies rather than consumers?
Yeah, Darren, that's a good question. So if you're selling to businesses, oftentimes the problem is that when you look at keyword searches, it's not really immediately obvious whether that's a consumer or a business having done that search. Now, Google has remarketing lists for search ads. It's called RLSA for short. And what you can do is you can take people who've come to specific sections of your website, or you can even do customer match. So if you have a list of email addresses of who you know your customers are, and these are businesses, you can actually start to bid more when they do more of those generic searches where you weren't quite sure, is that a consumer or is that a business? But now, because you've used remarketing based on certain pages that these people have visited, you know it's more likely to be a business, and so you can actually spend a bit more money on that and know it's probably going to be your target audience.
Makes a lot of sense. Great, thank you. Our next question here is from Whitney in Iowa. Whitney asked, am I too late to the game? There's a lot of competition already, and I'm worried I can't afford the CPCs for my industry.
Yeah, so this game has been played for a while now, but the good news is that as the game goes further along, Google is doing great updates in terms of technology, so targeting has become much more capable than it used to be. When I joined Google in 2002, I mean, it was basically tell us where you want to show your ads and what the keywords are, and that was the extent of it. But nowadays you have demographics, you have remarketing lists, you can do day parting, you can do all of these great things, so you can really still hone in on exactly who is your likely prospect, and that's where you can start playing. Now, that's not to say that the cost per clicks are going to be cheap in those cases, but because you're really honing in with a fairly good degree of certainty to that target customer, you can actually afford to spend a decent amount of money. And then, of course, on the back end, you know, there's no silver bullet here in online marketing. The people who are your sales team, the people who answer the phones, who reach out to your customers, they still have to do an amazing job as well, right? So they have to pick up the phone and really work with that customer. And of course, when they come into your physical location, you want to do an amazing job. But yeah, clearly like thousands, if not millions of advertisers are doing this successfully. So it's by no means too late. You just got to use all the right targeting options at this point.
Got it, thank you. And we have time for one more question today. It's from Elizabeth in California. Elizabeth asked, my website isn't yet mobile optimized. Is it worth the money to make this change?
Yeah, I think so. So, I mean, if you looked at what Tim was saying, mobile, that's what people use nowadays, right? So, and it doesn't actually necessarily cost that much anymore to get that mobile experience. Many of the systems that are out there to build websites, they basically give you a desktop site and a mobile site at the same time. It's responsive design. In fact, Google has a great list of partners that can help you with that, and the pricing is very, very reasonable. So, yeah, you gotta be where your prospective clients are. So I think now is definitely the time to get onto mobile and make sure that people can find you when they have those micro moments where they need something, and you're the company that can help them with that.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Fred. That's all the time we have for questions today. And while we couldn't get to each and every one, we did our best to touch on the topics that we saw most on Twitter. And as we wrap up, I'd like to thank Tim and Fred once again for joining us to present, and to all of you who tuned in from across the Americas. We hope you learned something valuable during our session today. As a reminder, the Google partners in the room can answer any follow-up questions that you may have, and they can, of course, also help you implement the Google tools that Fred covered today. Thanks again for joining us, and on behalf of the entire partners team in Mountain View, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.